And thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. President Trump is on a working vacation because there is simply no escaping a long list of challenges. Just this weekend, the United Nations issued new sanctions against North Korea for its escalating nuclear and missile programs. At the same time, the administration is looking to move ahead with its agenda to strengthen the economy and cut taxes. CBN's Jenna Browder has the story now from Washington.
President Trump is at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, but he says this is no vacation as his administration faces challenges both abroad and at home. Among those challenges, restoring order within the West Wing. Friday, new Chief of Staff John Kelly gathered about 200 White House aides for a meeting where he warned them against leaks, and Bloomberg reports he told them they all work for the president and have to act as one team.
Everyone having a good time?
There's also the ongoing Russia probe, where the White House got some good news. Some have criticized Special Counsel Robert Mueller for overreaching and looking into areas beyond where they think he should go. But Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein says Mueller understands there are limits to the scope of his investigation.
The Special Counsel is subject to the rules and regulations of the Department of Justice, and we don't engage in fishing expeditions.
The Trump administration also scored a big foreign policy win. The UN Security Council unanimously voted to sanction North Korea. The resolution was drafted by the United States and negotiated with North Korea's neighbor and ally, China. The measure punishes the regime for growing a nuclear and missile program. And perhaps most importantly, here at home, the economy is bouncing back, growing at 2.6%, an improvement but still short of Trump's goal of 3%.
GDP for the quarter just released at 2.6%. So that's so much higher than anticipated.
But that's just the beginning, as Trump is hoping to cut business and individual tax rates to help get the economy growing strongly again after years of weakness. Of course, he's going to need Congress to do this. When he gets back from his working vacation, Republicans in the House and Senate will have to pass a bill so he can sign it. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
The Trump administration is firing back at a New York Times article that suggests Vice President Mike Pence is preparing to run for president in 2020. The article suggests some Republicans are forming a shadow campaign in case President Trump doesn't run for re-election because of low poll numbers and ongoing investigations. Pence called the article fake news and offensive. Speaking on ABC's This Week, President Trump's advisor Kellyanne Conway strongly condemned the article.
That is complete fiction. That is complete fabrication. And I know that his advisors who had comments attributed to them have pushed back very strongly, as has the vice president, and as am I right now unequivocally. Vice President Pence is a very loyal, very dutiful, but also incredibly effective vice president, an active vice president with this president.
Conway said that Vice President Mike Pence is getting ready for the 2020 election as vice president for President Trump's second term. The city of Chicago is planning to file a lawsuit against the U.S. Justice Department. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel announced Sunday his city will sue the Trump administration for vowing to block federal grant money to sanctuary cities. A new requirement would force local police to report when illegal immigrants are released from police custody. The mayor says the city will not be, quote, blackmailed into changing its values as a welcoming city. A DOJ spokesperson told the Chicago Sun-Times the mayor is, quote, less concerned about keeping his city safe and is spending more time protecting criminal aliens and putting Chicago's law enforcement at greater risk. A Kansas man has pleaded guilty to trying to set off a bomb at an army base. Authorities say he acted on behalf of ISIS. CBN national security correspondent Eric Gonzalez has more on the growing threat facing America: homegrown terrorists.
This man, 20-year-old John T. Booker Jr. of Topeka, Kansas, will serve 30 years for attempting to detonate a car bomb on the Fort Riley military base. Agents say he tried to connect some wires to what he thought was a bomb inside of a van. It turns out that the bomb was provided by an FBI informant. Thankfully, the feds had him under surveillance for months.
Mr. Booker was a young man who was born in Kansas, raised in Kansas, went to school in Kansas, but somehow became lost and became self-radicalized in his basement watching jihad tapes, and adopted a perverse notion of what Islam was.
He was arrested at
Former U.S. Attorney Barry Grissom says the FBI investigation began after Booker posted on Facebook that he wanted to commit jihad. Grissom says Booker tried to enlist in the Army to commit an inside attack against American soldiers.
The notion that we can build a wall or that we can deny visas for the purpose of keeping folks who want to do our citizens harm, that's going to address any issues we have is completely wrong. Our biggest problem in law enforcement right now is the lone wolf.
Terror experts say people who feel disenfranchised from society and are looking for something bigger than themselves are often targeted by groups like ISIS. Many are not on government watch lists because they've never been arrested. The FBI reportedly has over 1,000 active terrorism investigations in all 50 states. Also, at least 250 people have attempted to or have traveled from the U.S. to join extremist groups in Syria or Iraq. And since March 2014, 128 individuals have been charged with terrorism-related activities in connection with ISIS.
O you who believe, answer the call of Allah.
Experts call it a homegrown phenomenon in the truest sense of the word.
They're vying for our youth. They're trying to attract them, as well as all the other competing Al-Qaeda. And there's a whole long list, quite honestly, of various groups.
Christiane Boudreau knows that all too well. Her son became an ISIS militant. While growing up in Calgary, Boudreau remembers Damien as a warm and compassionate young man. That all changed in high school. At age 17, feeling disconnected from his classmates, Damien converted to Islam. She had no idea what was coming when Damien told her he wanted to study Arabic in Egypt. In reality, the 22-year-old headed instead to Syria to join ISIS fighters.
At the end of January 2013, that's when our Canadian equivalent of the FBI showed up on the doorstep and said they've been watching him for almost 2 years.
In November 2012, Damien died during rebel infighting. Boudreau now runs Hyatt Canada Family Support and Mothers for Life to provide support and outreach for those affected by violent extremism. For Boudreau, the anti-jihad cause has taken over much of her life. She urges all parents to watch over their children and to make sure what they're watching online is appropriate. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, Syria is flooded with Iranian troops. Find out what this means for Israel and the world when we come back. Jordan's King Abdullah made a rare visit to Ramallah Monday to meet with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. It is the first time in 5 years the king has visited the Palestinian areas. The visit comes against the backdrop of tensions with Israel over the Temple Mount in Jerusalem during the last month. Jordan is the custodian of the Islamic holy city, including the Temple Mount. Ahead of his visit, King Abdullah said Jordan there would not be a breakthrough in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process if the U.S. isn't committed to supporting a solution to the Palestinian issue. After a 9-month battle, Iraq recaptured the city of Mosul from ISIS. Now the U.S.-led coalition remains focused on taking the fight to ISIS in Raqqa, Syria, the terror group's self-proclaimed capital. But as Chris Mitchell reports from the Golan Heights, some experts are warning the fight against the Islamic State might just be a prelude to a much more dangerous battle.
Most believe the victory in Mosul and the current offensive against ISIS in Raqqa signals the end of the Islamic State Caliphate. But what happens next is the major question facing the Middle East.
You have so many different actors, both at the state and sub-state level, that are working in these very amorphous coalitions and then, against one another, with one another, that this is a very, very dangerous place. I mean, this becomes a tinderbox.
Carolyn Glick says a wide range of actors, including Syria, Russia, the U.S., Turkey, the Kurds, Sunni Islamist groups, Hezbollah, and Iran, all make up that volatile mix.
You got a lot of people with weapons. You got a lot of fighting going on in a small territorial unit, and its implications both for great power relations and, of course, for the ability to cause massive instability in neighboring countries like Jordan, like you mentioned, Israel, and, of course, Iraq is sort of part of the same theater, are just almost mind-boggling.
From this vantage point on the Golan Heights, you can see that instability in action. A number of groups control Syria along Israel's border, including rebel forces and even ISIS. But the groups that concern Israel the most are the ones connected to Iran.
Not so far from here, we have thousands of Shiites
Iranian-backed militias that are fighting in Syria.
Avi Melamed says the West needs to know the war in Syria stretches beyond its borders.
The war in Syria is way beyond the civil war. Actually, what we see right now in Syria is a huge stage of a huge regional power struggle, roughly speaking, between two major forces. One are the Iranians and their backed militias on the one hand, and the other are the Arab Sunnis.
Glick warns Syria is flooded with Iranian troops.
The Syrian military today is Iranian, Hezbollah is Iranian, of course, Iran is Iranian, and they have an unlimited number of troops that they can bring in at will, and they are bringing into Syria from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, and it's basically a bottomless well of personnel that Iran can bring over and use as cannon fodder for its hegemonic aims in the Middle East.
Melamed warns Iran is trying to create a land bridge to Lebanon on the Mediterranean that would pose a great danger to Israel.
We have to remember that the Iranian regime vows the elimination of the State of Israel. Trying to launch a military front against Israel in the Golan Heights could result in a massive eruption, because Israel will not stand for that, and rightly so.
He says in order to better understand today's Middle East, you must go back in history to President Obama.
Obama's administration is definitely responsible for what I call a growing whirlpool of violence. The major reason for that is that Obama's administration, for whatever the reasons are, lined up with the Iranians, enabling the Iranians to expand their influence violently and proactively in different arenas in the region.
Now Iran's proxy Hezbollah poses an unprecedented threat to Israel.
They're in control of Lebanon and openly threatening war with Israel. And not only are their armaments sophisticated to a degree that we've never seen before in the hands of terrorists that are controlled by a terror regime, but their men under arms, their soldiers are battle-hardened, gruesome, brutal warriors who have been in the battlefield in Syria for the past 6 years.
Melamed believes the danger is greater now than when all of the Middle East ganged up on Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War.
It's much greater. Look, we are looking today at reality where you have dozens of thousands of Shiite militants that are already operating in Syria, massively armed, financed, and guided by the Iranians. The Iranians are, the same way they took over Lebanon in a remote control using the Hezbollah, the Iranians are envisioning a similar future to Syria.
That could lead to a confrontation with global implications.
And in Israeli signals, and the Israeli signals are going to be very powerful because Israel is determined not to allow the Iranians to make the Golan Heights a stage of war. The ramifications of the potential development that I was now portraying, of that reality on the ground, the ramifications are not only local, they are not only regional, they are exceeding the regional level, they could be global.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Golan Heights, Israel.
Up next, a working mom goes from fat to fit in her 40s. Her inspiring story and her amazing results next. If you're an adult who's been overweight all your life, you might think losing weight and getting fit after 40 is impossible. But the woman in our next story says that's simply not true because she lost 100 pounds. Lori Johnson talked with her to find out how she did it.
Over the hill? No way. Martha Van Camp looks and feels better now in her 40s than ever before. She lost 100 pounds. This size 20 dress used to be tight on her. Now she's a size 2.
I always felt like there was this fit body stuck in this fat girl's exterior.
This marketing executive, who's also a wife and mother, battled her weight since childhood.
I remember wearing a size 12 in middle school and not really being able to shop in the shops that other girls my age were shopping in. My junior year of college, I literally looked like a balloon that was ready to be popped. I was so overweight.
After endless failed attempts to lose weight, she gave up until...
Hit the 250, hit the age of 40, never exercised, realized something had to change.
And change she did. After doing extensive research on nutrition, she gave up processed foods, also known as convenience or packaged foods. These products line the shelves of the interior aisles of the grocery store and make up the bulk of fast food. Fast and easy processed foods have become the working woman's best friend. But when it comes to our weight, they can be our worst enemy. Processed foods are loaded with ingredients that can pack on the pounds, such as high fructose corn syrup and grains that have been stripped of their goodness. Processed foods contain flavorings and preservatives and other additives that can cause weight gain.
It's a chemical storm. We are so allergic to some of the things that they have put in food that our bodies just blow up.
Martha's body shrank when she stopped eating foods made by big companies and started eating foods she made at home from scratch. Lots of lean protein like turkey, chicken, fish, and egg whites. Also, plenty of vegetables. She really noticed a difference when she replaced processed simple carbohydrates like white bread and pasta with complex carbs like oats, sweet potatoes, and beans. She doesn't skimp on healthy fats either, like nuts, avocados, and coconut oil.
After like 2 or 3 days of eating the right way, oh my gosh, your energy is incredible.
Martha admits she has cut back on calories, especially from sugar, but says unlike the low-calorie diets she tried before, this one is easy to stick to because these satisfying foods make her feel full longer.
I was fat because I didn't understand the science of food.
Martha says in order to stabilize her blood sugar, which minimizes cravings, she has to eat one of her small home-cooked meals every 3 hours. Not so easy for a working mom, but she figured out a way to do it. On the weekend, she cooks her upcoming week's meals and pops them in the freezer. Then each morning before heading off to work, she grabs what she'll need that day.
It does take a couple weeks to get on autopilot, but then it's totally worth it.
Martha says eating right is the main reason she lost weight, but says exercise does play a big part in keeping her fit and healthy.
I remember I couldn't even do 3 air squats when I started.
In addition to doing cardio, Martha boosts her metabolism by lifting weights because muscle burns more calories than fat, even at rest. So if you've always been heavy, hate exercise, and think you're over the hill, Martha Van Camp is living proof that avoiding eating from a box or the drive-thru and embracing a clean diet rich in whole foods can help you lose weight and feel great at any age. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Never too old to make a change. Stay with us. There's more of CBN NewsWatch coming up right after this. Anthony Evans was a contestant on NBC's The Voice, but he's also a preacher's kid with a powerful story all his own. Some of that story is in his latest song, See You Again.
I've seen darkness shattered by light. I've seen joy break after the night. I want to see it again.
My first single is called See You Again, and the story behind that song is, this is a song that one of my friends wrote. Her name is Chrissy Nordoff, and she wrote songs like Your Great Name and Mercy. She's just a monster writer. We were writing one day and talking about the concept of being a preacher's kid. And I don't want to just live off the things that God's done in my life in the past. And there came a point where I was always telling the same story, always addressing, an issue or a resolve from way back. And I said to her, I need a fresh move of God in my life. And she was like, I just wrote a song called See You Again. And that's what it is. It's like, I've seen you, heal. I've seen you make tears into laughter. I've seen you return joy to me, but I want to see it again. I don't want to be telling the same story. So The bridge encompasses the whole song, basically. It says, we remember all the great things you have done, but we believe that greater things are still to come. And that is what the heart of See You Again is my plea for the Lord to do more, and in turn, me inviting the audience to beg him to do the same. And what he's faithful in doing is always meeting you there when you ask. My new album, Back to Life, is based on 3 things: honesty, vulnerability, and transparency, and how those 3 things have brought me back to life. I was at a place in my career and in my ministry where I felt very not alive, spiritually, emotionally, just dead. But I've also gotten to a place where I knew how to get on a stage and say the right things and sing the right notes, but that doesn't feel good. Artificial spiritual life or emotional life, that's still not real living. I love honest lyrics. I am so over pretense in life. I don't like pretense. It's a waste of time. Musically, we push the envelope. Vocally, we push the envelope. But more than that, content-wise, I push the envelope, and I want the listener to not feel like, oh, that's a great song. I want their heart to be moved. If I wanted to tickle ears, I would do some other kind of, or solely tickle ears, I would do some other kind of music, you know? And for me, success is not selling a bunch of albums and having a room full of people to listen to me sing. Success is me being at peace, because after having a hit record and a full tour, you can't go out and purchase peace. This album is about life change that I experienced and that I would love to translate into the listener's life.
With that, it's time now for your Monday motivation. You are the first and only you God created. There is no one else who can be you, and there is no one else you should be. So today, commit to being the best possible you and spend less time comparing yourself to others. With that word, be sure to make this a marvelous Monday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can catch more of the stories we have at cbnnews.com. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless everybody.